will start. So if you can get your seat, please. And I will... Ah. But if you have to leave, okay. Alors bonjour tout le monde, on va commencer et comme je vais parler en français, je vous invite éventuellement à vous saisir de l'interprétation. Alors bonjour à tous et à toutes, je suis Pauline Verrière, je travaille pour Action contre la faim et j'ai le très grand honneur de faire partie du comité de coordination du mécanisme de la société civile et des peuples autochtones, le MSCPA. Alors avec ma collègue Marie Kosker, qui est assise à côté de moi, nous sommes très heureuses de co-animer et de vous accueillir pour cet événement en route pour la COP30 et comment créer des liens entre le droit à l'alimentation et les 3 conventions de Rio. Alors ce sujet, il est vraiment fondamental pour le MSCPA parce que notre mandat, c'est le CSA, c'est de participer directement à l'élaboration des produits politiques du CSA et de faire en sorte que la réalité de nos constituantes et nos solutions soient au cœur de ces produits. L'inclusivité du CSA permet à ces produits politiques de refléter les réalités du terrain et d'impulser la création de politiques publiques qui sont de qualité. Pour autant, notre travail il ne s'arrête pas là, il ne s'arrête pas à la négociation de ces produits politiques. Il faut également les faire vivre, il faut les disséminer, il faut les mettre en œuvre. Et cette responsabilité, elle est collective et elle doit être portée à plusieurs niveaux. Elle doit être portée dans nos pays respectifs, mais elle doit être aussi portée au niveau international. Les produits politiques du CSA doivent servir de base aux autres négociations internationales qui touchent aux questions d'agriculture et d'alimentation. Et ça doit être le cas des 3 conventions de Rio. Le droit à l'alimentation doit être véritablement au cœur de ces négociations. Et c'est un travail pour lequel le MSCPA et les membres de ce mécanisme sont particulièrement actifs. Pour vous donner un exemple, cet événement auquel vous participez aujourd'hui fait écho à un autre événement parallèle qu'on a organisé en marge des négociations du climat à Bonn, pour lequel nous avions engagé ce même dialogue avec son Excellence, Madame l'ambassadrice Nosifo Gézilé. S'il fallait résumer mon propos ici, c'est que les produits politiques du CSA sont essentiels et qu'ils doivent être utilisés. Alors pour parler de ce sujet qui nous est très important, nous avons l'honneur d'avoir réuni ici un excellent panel. Nous avons son Excellence Madame l'ambassadrice Nosifo Gézilé, qui est présidente du CSA, son Excellence Madame l'ambassadrice de Colombie, Renifer Morica, Madame la représentante permanente adjointe d'Azerbaïdjan, Nigar Gurbanova Ramanzanli, pardon. Ces 3 personnes vont nous parler des connexions qui existent déjà aujourd'hui entre les produits politiques du CSA, le droit à l'alimentation et ces 3 conventions. Et nous avons un second segment qui va être plutôt tourné vers le futur, vers les choses que nous pourrions mieux créer, les connexions que nous pourrions mieux faire. Nous avons 4 personnes. Madame Larissa Maria Lima Costa, qui est coordinatrice générale pour la sécurité alimentaire et la nutrition, ministère des Affaires étrangères du Brésil, et conseillère du secrétaire général des Affaires étrangères sur la coopération internationale, la diversité et l'inclusion. Madame Christina Blanc, de la représentation permanente de la Suisse auprès des Trois Romaines, Madame Ruchi Tripathi, du mécanisme des fondations et de la philanthropie et du Fonds pour l'agroécologie, et enfin, notre estimée collègue, Madame Taïli Terena, du Conseil international des traités indiens, qui est également membre du comité de coordination et du groupe des jeunes du MSCPA. Donc nous allons commencer avec notre premier segment. Je voudrais inviter Madame la Présidente du CSA à nous expliquer comment les travaux du CSA sont pris en compte dans les autres espaces onusiens. Quel est le rôle que peut avoir le ou la présidente du CSA pour la promotion de ces produits politiques et comment est-ce qu'on peut mieux connecter du coup le droit à l'alimentation et les trois conventions de Rio. Merci beaucoup.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Wow, it's been a long week and a half mile to get through. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow panelists, it's again a great pleasure being invited to this event, and of importance in today's topic is that we are linking climate change, biodiversity loss and land degradation, which all pose significant threats to the realization of the right to adequate food, impacting both accessibility, adequacy, availability, and sustainability, which are core elements that we need to navigate in order to achieve food security. So this topic cannot be overestimated. It is timely and relevant, as it also important that we form a feedback loop where climate change drives biodiversity loss, and food contribute to land degradation. So these are elements that link to each other both in the physical processes, and in the end they do impact food security and even agricultural productivity or land productivity in that respect. As you know, the interlinkages between food security and nutrition on the one hand and combating climate change, loss of biodiversity and land degradation on the other are a topic on which I also have worked in many occasions, both in my national government capacity in South Africa and also in the context of being the chairperson of the Committee on World Food Security. And during my chairship of CFS, and in accordance with the multi-year program of work, we organized a high-level forum in May 2025, and the outcomes of which were discussed this last Monday, including with the contributions by the representatives of the Rio Secretariats, or the 3 Rio Conventions. This is quite a significant milestone, which I think we need to continue in the context of CFS engagements within a network of other UN agencies. Both the CFS plenary and the COPs of the Rio Convention are fundamental opportunities to reflect on how we need to address these interlinkages. CFS has a lot to offer in this respect. The right to food, being the backbone of CFS, should therefore be formally incorporated in policies aiming to address climate change, respond to biodiversity loss, or ensuring the resilience of ecosystem services and land degradation neutrality. For instance, in COP decisions in respect of the Climate Change Conference of Parties, national determined contributions are prepared by governments, our national states, and these should also infuse and reflect the activities that would promote and foster the right to food in in its in real context. The national determined or national adaptation plans, the NEPs, also in the context of UNCCD or in the Land Degradation Convention, are critical instruments, planning instruments that are utilized to, again, proactively prepare to ensure that agri-foods or agri-food systems maintain the level of productivity, and land degradation neutrality is essential to improve the productive potential of land. And lastly, the National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan in the context of CBD, the Biodiversity Conference of Parties, is quite an important instrument, again, both in terms of improving ecosystem resilience, also ensuring that in respect of strengthening carbon sinks, these are areas that are important for the aspect of agri-foods systems productivity. And I have here my other colleagues who hosted the COPs, both in Azerbaijan last year, as well as Colombia, and this year Brazil also coming on stream, will therefore be able also to reinforce the key messages about the interconnections between these Rio Conventions, as well as the work of the Committee on World Food Security. Similarly, or likewise, CFS policy products can significantly help in shaping the policies necessary to tackle climate change. And I mentioned during the plenary that at the COP that was hosted in Egypt, there was a commitment by state parties to develop a roadmap on climate action for agriculture and food security. And this is the context at which the CFS policy products could also be mainstreamed in order to ensure that that roadmap would therefore begin to also facilitate the uptake of the CFS policies that are rights-based and useful to advance food security. Biodiversity loss and land degradation, amongst others, require that policy recommendations on agroecology and other innovative approaches and voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition become important reference for transformation of food systems in the context of the Rio Conventions. I therefore assume that the next policy convergence work stream of the CFS on building resilient food systems will complement the list of the CFS policy products that are closely related to environmental challenges, be it climate, environmental challenges, or be it land degradation or dry lands response measures, or be it biodiversity, both in the context of ecosystems broadly, whether they are water, inland water systems, or whether they are ocean and marine ecosystems. All of these complement the necessity to build resilient food systems. I therefore hope that the CFS and the Rio Conventions will continue to dedicate attention to these important interlinkages of mutual benefit, underscoring the right to food, a framing of the CFS policies, because those conventions and the secretariats in their own right, their scope is very much more on being physical in response and science-based also in their own right. But on the other hand, in terms of our food security policies, we begin to bring it on board some of the social objectives that are crucial to be advanced and mainstreamed in the context of that work. So with that, I hope that you'll be able to have conversations here that would be able to reflect on how best to converge the agenda and strengthen those interlinkages and in a meaningful fashion without duplicating the responsibilities across these various UN institutions. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks a lot for these remarks, and we will now go back to the last biodiversity COP, so to the Ambassador of Colombia as being the last biodiversity COP host. Could you come back for us on the main outcomes relating to the right to food? And do you have any lessons to the next COP host to share with us?
Muchas gracias a la Secretaría, a la Presidenta Nocifo, a todos los organizadores del Comité de Seguridad Alimentaria y la Secretaría Técnica de los Mecanismos de Sociedad Civil y colegas que permiten generar esta discusión muy pertinente a puertas de la COP30, en donde ya estamos todo el año discutiendo sobre esto. Creo que es un motivo de optimismo encontrarnos hoy en unas voces compartidas sobre la pertinencia y la urgencia de generar esta relación estrecha entre las conferencias de las partes sobre suelos, biodiversidad y clima, junto con la seguridad alimentaria mundial. Yo creo que la COP sobre la biodiversidad de Colombia, que se realizó en Cali en el pasado mes de diciembre, enseñó sobre todas las cosas la relación directa entre las personas y la biodiversidad. La COP de la gente, la llamamos, la COP de las personas. Y trazó una ruta muy importante que resaltó específicamente la intención de avanzar en la implementación del Marco Mundial de Biodiversidad de Montreal, pero bajo una orientación que garantice el derecho a la alimentación de manera justa, sostenible y equitativa, reconociendo que la biodiversidad es la base también de la seguridad alimentaria y de la salud de nuestras comunidades. Quisiera resaltar dos elementos que fueron importantes. El primero es este: si se protege y restaura la biodiversidad que sustenta la producción de alimentos mediante sistemas agrícolas diversificados y los conocimientos tradicionales de pueblos indígenas y comunidades, podemos con total seguridad avanzar también en los compromisos de acción climática. Y en esta COP sobre biodiversidad, la comunidad fue testigo de ese punto de inflexión histórico que reconoció la gobernanza global de la biodiversidad. Se logró un acuerdo sobre el artículo 8J dentro del programa de trabajo que crea especialmente este nuevo órgano subsidiario sobre el conocimiento de los pueblos indígenas, que también fue extendido a comunidades afro y comunidades locales. Cómo el conocimiento refleja esta posibilidad única de poder garantizar una conservación, un uso sostenible y una restauración de la biodiversidad a través de un enfoque biocéntrico. Yo creo que el biocentrismo fue ese grano de arena que trazó la COP16 y que tiene que ser recogida sin duda alguna en el foro internacional mundial, no solamente reducida a esferas de discusiones climáticas y ambientales, sino las esferas del desarrollo humano integral. Un segundo elemento tiene que ver también con la adopción del Plan de Acción Mundial sobre Biodiversidad y Salud, que también reconoce esa interdependencia entre los sistemas alimentarios, la salud humana y los ecosistemas. Este instrumento aporta una hoja de ruta concreta que genera beneficios en nutrición, producción sostenible y resiliencia alimentaria. Y sin duda creo que son terminologías muy similares a las que estamos acostumbrados dentro del escenario del Comité de Seguridad Alimentaria Mundial. Recuerden que la COP16 cerró sus discusiones y negociaciones justamente aquí en la sede de la FAO, empezando este año. Y creo que fue más que simbólico y oportuno también, porque traer esa discusión pertinente sobre la biodiversidad, sobre las semillas, sobre el patrimonio genético, sobre la gobernanza responsable de los recursos que no pueden ser divisibles frente a los derechos a la tierra de los pueblos y de las comunidades, al derecho humano a la alimentación, a la seguridad alimentaria, pues son esa intersección que considero debe seguir siendo una hoja a discutir en estas agencias multilaterales. Con esta visión o desde esta perspectiva y cúmulo que logró avanzar incluso en acciones concretas como lo es el nuevo Fondo para la Financiación de la Biodiversidad, creemos que la COP30 en Brasil podría ser esa priorización de los vínculos entre la biodiversidad, el cambio climático y el Comité de Seguridad Alimentaria Mundial. Espacios que permitan avanzar en un desarrollo sostenible de la mano de ese pilar de desarrollo. Invitamos a que los estados y los organismos internacionales sumen esfuerzos y participen activamente dentro de las discusiones previas y durante la participación en la COP30 en Brasil, y que podamos desde estas delegaciones ante el escenario de las agencias basadas en Roma, ante el Comité de Seguridad Alimentaria Mundial, recopilar las evoluciones y desarrollos en una línea de progresividad que logre generar este desarrollo armónico. Una sola salud no es solamente un lema vacío, una sola salud es la síntesis de que es imposible cumplir las metas 2030 y la Agenda Climática Mundial sin reconocer de la misma manera y de manera intensiva los derechos de las comunidades locales, pueblos indígenas, comunidades afros en relación estrecha con la naturaleza. Alimentarse bien también es una forma de cuidar la selva y la biodiversidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for this strong message and also inviting us to look at COP30. But before we do this, I'd like to go back on the COP that happened in Azerbaijan. Do you have also any lessons learned to share with the next COP host? And could you share with us the main outcomes relating to the right to food?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Excellencies, dear friends, colleagues. Thank you for being with us today. It's a true honor to address this side event. As you may know, that last year in November, Azerbaijan proudly hosted the 29th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. As a COP29 presidency, Azerbaijan demonstrated strong leadership in global climate agenda. We were privileged to welcome the international climate community to Baku and to steer collective efforts towards the historic Baku Climate Unity Pact. Building on the success of COP29 and our ongoing responsibilities as the presidency, Azerbaijan remains committed to keeping climate action at the top of the global agenda. To maintain this momentum, Azerbaijan launched 14 global initiatives designed to catalyze transformative action. Our presidency has placed strong emphasis on advancing climate-resilient development, particularly in sectors that directly impact people's lives, such as agriculture, food systems, water resource management, and rural livelihoods. Now, I just want to highlight several key achievements on the climate agenda that demonstrate our strong commitment and determination to turn the words into action. The first one is the finance. During the COP29, parties reached a landmark agreement on the Baku finance goal, establishing a new collective quantified goal with a significantly higher ambition. The Loss and Damage Fund became fully operational and is now ready to disperse support to those most affected by climate impacts. In addition, multilateral development banks signaled a substantial scale-up in climate financial commitments. The second one is the higher integrity carbon markets. After years of delay, finally, rules to operationalize the Baku Agreement, Paris Agreement's market mechanisms were concluded, bringing the Paris rulebook fully into effect. The third one is transparency. Trust and accountability were strengthened. A large wave of BTRs, it's the biennial transparency reports, submissions was achieved, and the Baku Transparency Platform was established as a hub for collaboration and capacity support. The fourth one is mitigation. Parties reached consensus on a decision of the mitigation work program and adopted the Forum on Response Measures, Work Plan 2026-2030. The next one is the adaptation. Baku Adaptation Roadmap was launched, progress advanced on global goal on adaptation indicators, and a dedicated work plan for indigenous people and local communities was established. And the last but not least, it was the gender. The enhanced Lima work program on gender was adopted, opening a new 10-year chapter for advancing gender considerations across climate policy and action. So several COP29 action agenda initiatives speak directly to food security. For example, the Declaration on Water for Climate Action, the Declaration on Reducing Methane from Waste, Organic Waste, which cuts food loss and urban emissions, and the Global Energy Storage and Grids Pledge, which strengthens reliable power for cold chains and processing. These create practical bridges between climate ambition and everyday food access. And one of our flagship initiatives is the Baku Harmonia Climate Initiative for Farmers, launched in the partnership with FAO. Last year, a letter of intent was signed between the government of Azerbaijan and FAO to take this initiative forward. The Harmonia aims to coordinate existing efforts in climate-resilient agriculture, improve coherence across fragmented initiatives, to empower farmers, villages and rural communities, identify policies and financing gaps, catalyze investment, both private and public, into agri-food systems transformation, and most importantly, build capacities of underrepresented groups, including women, youth, and those who live in remote areas. This initiative is aligned with other global efforts such as the FAST initiative, Food and Agriculture for Sustainable Transformation, which was launched during the COP27 to enhance climate finance for food systems. Harmonia seeks to create an enabling environment by improving access to finance, promoting policy coherence, and strengthening partnerships among governments, youth, farmers, and financial actors. As we advance this agenda, it's essential that climate and food policies prioritize the rights and needs of the most vulnerable, smallholder farmers, women, indigenous people, and others disproportionately impacted by the climate change. COP29 moved climate action closer to the right of food. The decisions taken in Baku have put implementation within reach. Stronger finance, clearer rules, greater transparency, and practical initiatives that connect climate ambition with daily realities. Through Harmonia, we are building the bridge from international processes to farmers' fields, prioritizing their rights, inclusion, and measurable results. Let us continue to work to turn this momentum into secure, affordable, and nutritious food and resilient rural livelihoods. Azerbaijan stands ready to work with partners to deepen these synergies so that climate action is felt where it matters most, on people's plates and in farmers' incomes. In this regard, the role of the Committee of World Food Security is vital. It can serve as a bridge between international bodies and frameworks, ensuring that climate and food policies are coherent, consistent, and mutually reinforcing. Let me conclude by reaffirming that we as the COP29 presidency are placing agriculture and food security at the heart of global climate action. With initiatives like Harmonia, as I mentioned before, and with your collective engagement, we can move forward, hand in hand, for a better food and better future. Let us leave this room with a shared commitment to align our initiatives, scale up investment, and empower all, especially young people who are the agents of change. Together we can make rural communities more resilient, secure farmers' livelihoods, and build truly sustainable food systems for the generations to come. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup Nigar et merci à nos 3 intervenantes pour tous ces éléments dont on peut s'inspirer pour construire et pour améliorer les prochains processus internationaux. Et c'est justement l'objet de notre second segment de panel. Donc je me tourne vers Madame Larissa Maria Lima Costa, coordinatrice générale de la sécurité alimentaire et la nutrition au ministère des Affaires étrangères du Brésil. Et nous aimerions beaucoup avoir la perspective de votre pays sur l'organisation de la prochaine COP climat. Quels seront les liens qui vont être faits avec le droit à l'alimentation et comment est-ce que la COP pourrait-elle s'inspirer du CSA en matière d'inclusion de la société civile et des peuples autochtones? Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank CISPM for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure to listen to my colleagues here. I'm very glad to be in a panel composed only by wonderful women. It's a luxury and it's a pleasure. What I can say about the Brazilian presidency of COP30 plans for the interlinkages between the right to food and climate action is first of all that we are taking into account the lessons of our colleagues from Azerbaijan, from Colombia, and other countries that have hosted Rio Convention of the parties before us. In terms of climate change, the links between climate change, food and nutrition, insecurity and extreme poverty, we all know that it's clear. As President Lula said last week here in FAO, COP30 will be the COP of implementation and the opportunity to link concretely the fight against hunger with the fight against climate change. So why the Brazilian presidency is planning to do that, or how we are planning to do that. First of all, Brazil is putting on the table a declaration on hunger, poverty, and human-centered climate action. The declaration was presented a few weeks ago at the pre-COP meeting in Brasilia. And we are, of course, reaching out countries through their delegations in New York and also in Brasilia. And this declaration presents a few commitments regarding how to place the fight against hunger and poverty at the core of global climate action. This declaration is based in a few premises. First one being the fact that climate change either driven or exacerbate hunger, poverty, and food insecurity, as I said. The second one is that addressing an equal distribution of climate impacts require a shift in climate action. And this shift relates to the adoption of a human-centered climate response that will contribute to just transition and the realization of the right to food, the rights to social security, and other human rights. So these all will require social dialogue, participation, involvement of civil society, smallholder farmers, pastoralists, fisher folks, indigenous peoples and local communities, and all the ones who are the most affected and vulnerable to climate impacts. The declaration contains, as I said, a lot of commitments around 3 main pillars. The first pillar is the consideration of social protection as a foundation for resilience. And this, I think it might be an added value regarding the work that Azerbaijan has already done in COP29, linking the right to food to climate action. We are here putting the focus on the role of social protection as a foundation for resilience. We know that more than 50% of the world population lacks access to social protection mechanisms, including those who are the most vulnerable and affected by climate change. So putting social protection at the center of climate action is, in our view, a way to link measures to expand climate adapted social protection mechanisms for this population and mobilize more climate funding for this objective. The second pillar relates to the support of small-scale food producers as agents of resilience. So the idea is to adopt commitments in investing more to improve small-scale food producers' resilience, to scale up solutions to manage climate risks and increase resilience, and expand access to climate resilience infrastructure and services to these actors. And the third pillar of the declaration is related to enabling just transitions for people in forests and other key ecosystems, sensitive ecosystems. So we are talking about, for example, expanding sustainable livelihood alternatives to these populations, and also to protect forest tenure rights and other indigenous peoples' rights. With regard to means of implementation, the declaration calls for the inclusion of this human-centered climate action approach in national strategies, in maps, in countries and DCs, as well as the CFS president has mentioned before. And there's also a small chapter in human-centered climate action in fragile situations and protected crises, which also relates to the discussions that we have just had in plenary this morning. So, as I said, the declaration is open for endorsement. We are very happy that Colombia has already endorsed the declaration we heard yesterday. So I can share the document with the CISPM Secretariat later in order to allow you to read the entire declaration proposal, and we hope this declaration will be adopted at the leaders' meeting early November. The other element of COP30 organization that I would like to flag is the action agenda. You probably know by now that Brazil is proposing to inaugurate in COP30 a framework, a more structured framework for capable of mobilizing all actors in efforts to accelerate the implementation of what has already been agreed and negotiated and based on the results of the first global stocktake under the UNFCCC framework. This action agenda is structured in 6 pillars, and one of these pillars relates to transforming agriculture and food systems, and there are objectives related to this pillar, being land restoration and sustainable agriculture, more resilient and adaptive sustainable food systems, and also equitable access to adequate food and nutrition for all. The 5th pillar of this action agenda refers to fostering human and social development, and there's one specific objective related to reducing the effects of climate change on eradicating hunger and poverty. There will be a lot of events happening during COP30 in Belém regarding the action agenda. I think everyone who is involved in activities, in one at least activity related to these objectives, everyone was invited to submit proposals to organize into events, and also to disseminate their initiatives during COP30. And with this, I refer back to what Pauline has mentioned at the beginning of this session, that one of the goals of the mechanism is to disseminate, not only to participate in the elaboration, the development of CFS products, but also to disseminate them in other international fora. So I think the action agenda activities in Belém will be a very good opportunity for everybody to do this. So these were my first remarks. I thank you for the invitation again, and I'm open for questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, and we were very pleased to hear the word just transitions, social dialogue, social participation so strongly. This is very important for us indeed. I will now turn to Switzerland with Christina as a state with a strong agenda on building synergies. What successful strategies can you underline on building these connections between the different spaces?
Thank you for inviting us, and we are pleased to share some of our approaches on how we try as a member state or as Switzerland to strengthen the synergies between the conventions, but also the transformation towards sustainable food system and the right to food. We believe that building bridges across these processes is essential if we want to deliver coherent, effective and inclusive solutions to the interconnected challenges of climate change, land degradation, biodiversity loss, and to achieve food security and nutrition. And I would like to highlight three points. One is the coordination of national positions. The second one is the support of civil society and science policy interfaces and science policy dialogues, as well as the strengthening of cooperation of the different conventions, but also other organizations. With regard to coordination of national positions, in Switzerland we have different departments that are responsible for the different conventions. As an example, you have the Department of Environment that is responsible for biodiversity and climate change, whereas, as an example, the Federal Office for Agriculture is in charge for agriculture and sustainable food systems, and Foreign Affairs in charge for human rights and development cooperation. So when we have to work on positions, there will be consultation, there will be a lot of working groups in order that all the different aspects might be at the end in the common position we represent in the different COPs or other governing bodies. It's not always easy to find a consensus, and it takes time, but I think there are some also successes we can share. As an example, here in the CFS, we negotiated the voluntary guidelines on land governance, and at the same time, in the context of the UNCCD on land degradation, some member states and civil society started also to bring in the topic of land governance much more strongly. And finally, some member states, with the support also of civil society, in Delhi at the COP30 in 2019, we reached a resolution on land governance. So this was the first time that the topic, that the voluntary guidelines are also referenced in one of the resolutions, and I think that the work continued. Another example, when the member states negotiated the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Here in Rome, there was a strong group of friends or like-minded group of friends on biodiversity and food systems, which then also have quite, especially also in Switzerland, have quite some influence also on the Swiss position or the Swiss discussion among the departments. And I think when you look at the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework targets, they are much stronger compared to the Aichi targets on sustainable food system transformation. That was the first point. The second point is on strengthening, supporting civil society. As Switzerland, we do not only support civil society in the context of the CFS, but also in other Rio Conventions. And we encourage them also to exchange amongst each other in order that the different strengths and topics also can influence the position of in other conventions. And the same applies also for the science policy interfaces. Here we have the HLPE, and we also encourage them to talk with their colleagues in the other science policy interfaces. And hoping that the science-based evidence in these conventions also takes into account sustainable food system transformation much more. And the last example is on encouraging cooperation amongst organizations and strengthening exchange at the level of secretariats also. And Ambassador Jedile already mentioned the high-level forum on climate change, biodiversity loss, land degradation, and the right to food as one example to bring in the conventions to Rome. And we also hope that this dialogue can continue. So in conclusion, we believe that addressing the challenges of our time requires a systemic approach, and tackling individual issues in isolation will not get us where we want to be. So 1 + 1 will become more when we work together, will become more than 2 when we work together. Especially also increasing financial constraints there's a possibility that they compel us to join forces even more strongly, and we can start to work together more effectively. Working together across conventions, across institutions, and across communities allows us to mobilize more effectively for our shared objectives, protecting ecosystem, ensuring food security, and realizing the right to food for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a million, underlining these very precise actions, and particularly appreciating the support between different articulations of civil society in these different spaces. This is very, very important as we build on the road to COP30. And I know Ruchi of the Philanthropies Foundations mechanism is also working on this. So I would like to ask you, from your perspective, what are the existing gaps and how do we make better connections between those spaces?
Thank you, Marie. Thanks for the opportunity to share some perspectives on behalf of the Philanthropic Foundations mechanism. I will share some of our work to connect across the 3 Rio Conventions. And for us, this is particularly through supporting work on agroecology, agrobiodiversity, and women's rights to land. Many philanthropies have been investing in agroecology and regenerative food systems as a solution that links climate resilience, biodiversity restoration, and food system transformation. We at the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, along with our members and other philanthropic partners, are investing in initiatives like RAFT, which stands for Regenerative and Agroecological Food Systems Transitions. This is a collaboration of 32 philanthropies to accelerate transformation towards agroecological and regenerative food systems. This closely aligns with all 3 Rio Conventions. At COP29, as the Global Alliance, we had launched a report that really showed how little of the funding of the public climate finance was going towards food systems transformation. At that point, the figure stood at 2.5%, and if you looked at sustainable food systems practices, of which agroecology is part of, it was a mere 1.5% of public climate finance going towards sustainable food systems transformation. Moving on to agrobiodiversity. In the past, many philanthropies were supporting preservation, not in agriculture and mixed-use landscapes. This is shifting now. There is more interest in preserving agrobiodiversity within agricultural landscapes, and this, as all of us know, is very, very important. And this support can take the form of strengthening public agricultural research, of upholding farmers' rights to seeds, or through supporting calls for increased funding for access and benefit sharing mechanisms, such as the new Kali Fund, as well as under the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. Agrobiodiversity must be at the center of food systems policy and financing due to its crucial links to the Convention on Biological Diversity and the right to food. In spirit of supporting stronger NBSAPs, the National Biodiversity Action Plans, we produced a guidance on how biodiversity can be boosted through agroecology. And I'll be happy to share the links to that report. Finally, moving on to land, foundations within our network are supporting Women's Rights to Land initiative that brings together secretariats of the 3 Rio Conventions along with women's land rights organizations. The goal of this initiative is to bring about stronger coordination across the conventions to safeguard women's land rights, enhance gender equality in land governance frameworks, and ensure women can robustly contribute to climate action. Land tenure is a cross-cutting enabler for realizing the Rio Conventions and the right to food, especially in fragile or degraded landscapes. We advocate for greater coordination and interoperability between instruments, for example, bridging CFS policy processes with implementation mechanisms under CBD, UNFCCC, and UNCCD, and linking the international treaty with CFS monitoring frameworks. New initiatives such as the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty offer important opportunities to strengthen these collaborations and connections. In conclusion, we believe in the critical role of the CFS in promoting coherence and accountability, especially through its monitoring workstream, and we value dialogues in this as a space to advance Rio Conventions implementation through a right to food lens. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ruchi. It's always great to see how we have CFS allies a bit everywhere around the world and in different institutions. And finally, I will turn to Tai Li. You have also been representing indigenous peoples' organizations in the climate space for a long time, so you have a great experience navigating both the CFS and the UNFCCC. So what are the main messages from the CSIPM Youth Working Group ahead of COP30?
Indigenous greetings from the Terena people from the Pantanal of Brazil. It's my great pleasure to be here representing the civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism, especially to bring the youth perspective for this conversation. When the three Rio Conventions was born in Brazil, I was not even a dream of my parents. But they were there, fighting for the rights of Mother Earth and our rights as indigenous peoples, organizing the Carioca, a parallel independent space that reunited more than 500 indigenous peoples from all around the globe, as we were not allowed to enter in the official zone of the meetings. At that time, indigenous leaders created the Earth Letter, a document that should be guiding us as society, but unfortunately, not all states remember it. At that time, only 3 indigenous could enter to speak and echo our voice in the plenary to the states. I bring this context because your history does not recognize our participation in this process. This year is an important and strategic year for all of us. Not only we are getting closer and closer to the point of no return on climate, but it's also when we are coming back for the first time to the home of the 3 Rio Conventions and the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. An important moment for us to reflect on what we did as humanity and to remember our responsibility to the planet and future generations. Our efforts were not enough. We, the youth of nowadays, are burned with the responsibility of fixing what we didn't have the courage to do. Because we already have the materials we need: international commitments, scientific data on climate impact, and finance, even that some people doesn't recognize it. After all, we spend trillions on war that generate hunger, anguish, and death that could easily be spent on actions to build collective good living. There is a lack of interest and ambition on the part of the states to take real action. Ego attachment to power and control are making us forget to reconnect with what really matters. To really guarantee our right to food, considering that we are addressing climate change, protecting our biodiversity, and facing desertification, we as youth from the CSIPM from all parts of the world have collectively worked in a document with our priorities that you can access in our web page of the CSIPM. In this document, we outline 12 key points, but I would like to highlight 4 of them. 1, just transitions on food systems to really guarantee our right to food in a respectful way to the land, water, and climate. We need to make a just transition from industrial and corporate-controlled food production. We need to promote agroecology, guaranteeing democratic access for small farmers, fishers, and indigenous peoples to the new technologies and finance for food sovereignty. 2, realize rights to productive resource and deliver agrarian transformation in line with UN DROP and UN DRIP. As scientific data already has shown, indigenous people's right to their lands, territories, and waterways, including the right to return to the ancestral land, is a climate solution. Although we talk a lot about agrarian reform, we, the youth, demand integral agrarian transformation, as for us, reform is not enough. 3, ensure our right and the right of the future generations to a healthy environment and an end to practices that contaminate the planet, such as extractivism, monocultures, and the use of agrotoxins, fossil fuels, and other chemicals which intensify global warming. 4, end the industrial capitalism that is the death of the planet. Since colonization, this system has caused catastrophes on our planet. If we really want to transform the reality that we live and postpone the end of the world, we need to transform the system to something that respects planetary boundaries, human rights, indigenous people's rights, and that prioritizes our health, our communities, the planet, and future generations. With that, I'd like to share with you a small video that we did collecting stories about the reality on the ground, on how we are being impacted by the climate catastrophe, but also showing how youth are leading the transformation we want to see. Collectively, respecting each other, in a multirão, we can change the world. Aina Poiaque, thank you.
geographically, and this is an area where we do a lot of rice farming. And the impact of the climate in this area has been low rainfall because, as you know, rice depends on a lot of water.
Actuellement, les impacts négatifs du réchauffement climatique sur les végétaux et animaux sont très visibles dans notre pays.
As young people working across climate and agri-food systems, we know that sustainable development cannot happen without recognizing the intersectionality of youth, gender, and food systems.
We call on this space to prioritize agroecology as a way to achieve SDGs 2, 4, 5, and 8, rooted in equity, biodiversity, and local food sovereignty. Agroecology empowers youth-led innovations, creates decent work, and builds climate resilience.
Alors, on va pouvoir avoir un très court échange avec la salle. Donc, s'il y a 2-3 personnes qui souhaitent intervenir, poser des questions, vous êtes bienvenus pour faire ça. Si vous pouvez vous présenter avant. Et je vais aussi vous demander de faire ça de manière très courte parce qu'on a très peu de temps pour ensuite pouvoir permettre à nos panélistes de réagir. Donc, n'hésitez pas à lever la main. Alors, je ne vois pas nécessairement de réaction depuis la salle, mais on a entendu plein de choses très riches dans notre panel. Donc, peut-être ce qu'on peut faire, c'est refaire un tour de table, que chacune des intervenantes puisse prendre la parole et peut-être aussi partager vos réactions par rapport aux autres choses qui ont pu... Ah, on a une question, on a une intervention ?
Hello, my name is Claire Charlo. I'm Flathead Reservation, Montana, from the United States. We're indigenous, and I just wanted to say that the intervention that Ty Lee made was very powerful, especially for the voices of youth. I find that we're kind of stagnant in the way that we're involving youth, and so Ty Lee, I was just hoping that you could give ideas to the youth that are coming into the movement. How can they be more involved?
Thanks a lot. So maybe we can start with Tylee and then go back up to the panel. Thanks, Tylee. You have 1 minute. Sorry for that.
Thank you, Claire, for your question. I think for the new youth, it's really important to feel confident with the story that we carry with us, not to feel afraid, because when we enter in these international spaces, can be so intimidated. But you know, we have our stories, we have our knowledge with us, and we have a lot to contribute to these spaces. We heard from the state's representatives that they want to engage the youth, so I think it's about to have the courage to make this space for us. And I also want to say to my colleagues that are here that we are really ready to contribute and work together in a collective way to really implement the actions that we need for the planet. So thank you, everyone.
Please.
Thank you so much. Not only wonderful, but powerful podium. That it's the big change. There is an issue. Now we are setting up these new funds, the Loss and Damage Fund, the Cali Fund, and then the mechanism of those funds never allow us to use these resources. So this is essential that we do, and how we can do that to make these funds really available to the people that are really doing all the activity on the field. Thank you so much.
So I think maybe there is one last, yes, and you will be the last, then we will. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Remy Still Smoking. I'm from the Flathead Reservation with the Bitterroot Salish in Kootenai. And I was wondering, with the inclusion of youth, how do we combat that some corporations may send youth to other groups to infiltrate and push greenwashing ideologies? How do we combat that as well with the inclusion of youth? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So now I will give the floor to, I think we will, I'm really sorry. Yeah. So we will go to Ruchi for 1 minute. Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I really enjoyed all the interventions and remarks. And one of the things that I'm left wondering is really around, coordination. We talked a lot about coordination of the 3 Rio Conventions with the CFS. And we have so many guidance coming from the international level around the coordination. But we also heard, Christina, from you around coordination amongst the governments and interministerial kind of collaboration. Because ultimately, all of this becomes real at the community level, at the country level. So really, I mean, my question or what I'm left thinking is, how do we facilitate food systems transformation through pushing on the Rio agenda, the right to food agenda, but really meaningfully from a community and a grassroots and a country perspective? So what are the tools and mechanisms? And I think we have that beautifully presented by the youth here as well. So we have to take this outside of the policy processes as well, if this has to become operationable and a reality. So beyond, I guess, beyond the policy dialogues. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now we can move to Christina.
Thank you for giving the floor. My final remarks would go to the COP30 and to Brazil. And we really hope that when it comes to food systems in the context of the COP, that agroecology could be or will become a more important approach when it comes to food system transformation and to climate change adaptation and mitigation. And I referred in my intervention a little bit more on the smallest of the convention of the UNCCD. And I think also there, land degradation, and in that context also the CFS with the voluntary guidelines on land governance, and upcoming conference in Colombia, the ICAR +20, that also land rights and land governance in the context of climate change will become more important. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now we have Larissa, please.
Well, thank you. I will just make a quick comment regarding the comment that was made about real access or enabling more access to farmers regarding climate finance. And in this Belém Declaration that I referred to earlier, there are commitments specifically on that, because we know that there are disenablers that we have to tackle in the future. So we are concerned about that as well. And regarding the participation of youth, Talia remarks were very powerful as well. And I just wanted to flag that the Brazilian government values very much the participation of youth in international Rio Convention meetings. And for COP30, together with the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples, we organized negotiation a technical course in international negotiation targeting indigenous peoples in order to allow them to participate more closely on the debate. And we are also opening quotas for indigenous diplomats in our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So Tyler, you are more than welcome.
Thanks a lot. Then we have Jennifer, please.
Sobre la financiación, sin duda creo que es necesario pasar de las palabras a los hechos, porque se nos va a acercar el punto de no retorno y las acciones no se pueden aplazar. Creo que esa propuesta de la COP30 en Brasil sobre la COP de las realizaciones y los hechos tiene que ser hoy un consenso mundial. Nosotros en Cartagena, en la COP16, tratamos de hacer avances en esa línea, cómo materializar estas discusiones tan amplias, porque así como Tali comentaba que los pueblos indígenas se habían quedado por fuera de los inicios de las discusiones del clima, pues también nos pasó a los países del sur global. A los países que tenemos la biodiversidad, a los países que más padecemos las consecuencias de los cambios climáticos, a los países que debemos soportar de primera mano la carga de cuidar ecosistemas, selvas, ríos, que además somos los países que no generamos grandes aportes al calentamiento global, también nos hayan dejado por fuera. Entonces, este es un diálogo de los excluidos. Por eso, para Colombia, la COP16 tuvo el lema, la COP de la gente, la COP de todas estas personas que no cuentan ordinariamente. Y por eso sus conclusiones son tan fuertes. Por eso es el momento en que sean las comunidades indígenas, las comunidades afro, las comunidades locales, campesinas, los que habitan en los ecosistemas que llamamos estratégicos, pero que para las comunidades son sus territorios y sus recursos y sus derechos y sus planes de vida. Yo creo que la financiación hay que dejarla de ver bajo la lógica de los fondos verticales de inversiones climáticas, porque si lo vemos de esa manera, Andreas, pues vamos a llegar al punto de la extinción humana y no a lograr estructurarse los proyectos. Colombia tiene una experiencia larga en inversiones climáticas y los que trabajamos en esto sabemos que incluso para los estados mismos un proyecto y una negociación dura entre 5 a 7 años de estructuración. ¿Van a salvar esas inversiones la vida de la humanidad y del planeta? No. Hay una serie de instrumentos de financiación y apalancamiento para el desarrollo. Están todos los recursos que tienen los estados, no solamente en los órganos nacionales, sino también subregionales, y toda la cooperación que hacen los estados también en esas materias que no se limitan a lo que llamamos únicamente climático, que tienen que ver con el desarrollo humano integral, que tienen que ver con la multisectorialidad, con la generación o potenciación de lo que llamamos los medios de vida para que las comunidades, alimentándose bien y viviendo conforme a sus costumbres, puedan también cuidar el planeta. Creo que ese es un cambio enorme y los fondos tienen que buscar ser más flexibles. Sin duda esos fondos o las inversiones deben ir directamente a las comunidades y ahí tenemos todo un desafío también global. Creo que también es importante revisar también lo que llamamos esas pagos de servicios ambientales, esos ejercicios de cooperación ambiental, y es una discusión que también hemos tenido a lo largo de esta semana aquí, que nos tenemos que llevar en la discusión de la COP, porque lo que vemos hoy después de 10 años es que se ha usado ahora el discurso climático para generar más despojo, más acaparamiento de tierra. Hoy el land grabbing es green grabbing, hoy la presión del desarrollo sobre el calentamiento global no genera armonía, sino más exclusión y más pobreza y más despojo. Y adivinen en dónde podemos seguir hablando de esto. Quiero saber si están despiertos o están dormidos. A ver, ¿qué va a decir Colombia? ¿Qué diría Colombia? ¿En dónde podemos seguir haciendo estas discusiones? En la segunda Conferencia Internacional de Reforma Agraria, a la que están todos y todas cordialmente invitados en Cartagena el 24 de febrero del próximo año, que también contará, replicando el modelo de Cali de la COP16, con una amplia participación de sociedad civil, pueblos indígenas, mujeres, jóvenes, sector privado, academia, porque sin duda la solución de todas estas discusiones tiene que ser integral.
Merci beaucoup. Et nous avons Nika.
Merci beaucoup, Pauline. Thanks for your remarks, questions. I just want to, I will be very brief. Regarding loss and damage fund, as you may know, that it was launched during the COP27 in 2022. Afterwards, the first pledge was made after the COP28, and we, as the COP29 presidency, we have tried to revitalize this fund just to reach the most vulnerable ones. So we are working with the previous COPs and also with the incoming COPs just to not just to sign some documents, etc., just to make actions. Just turn our words, not just words, into actions. Regarding the youth participation, as you may know, it's that just we have the first presidency youth champion. It was launched during our COP presidency, and it will be further elaborated during the next COPs, etc. And as I mentioned before, the youth are the agents of change. So just we want to work with youth because they are our future. And if we if we save our agri-food systems now, just it's not only for us, just for the future. And just I want to conclude my my remark with the quote of very famous 13th century Eastern poet, Jalaluddin Rumi, maybe you know him. Just he said that you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in the drop. So if each, even very small step matters. Never underestimate, just we should make some global change. If we start with us, even the personally, so just we can build more resilient, much better world. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I will cheat a bit because I will give a few seconds more to Tali, and then Marie will do the conclusion.
Thank you for giving me the floor again. And thank you also for my colleagues here. And indeed, I think we had a lot of challenge, not only for indigenous peoples, the youth, also like this structure of the global right now, you know, like global south, global north, how the colonization keeps alive in our countries, and this is related to the funds, why we don't have direct access to funds, because they don't believe there is a trust issue as well on that, and all the access and the debts and all those things are related, so we need to be better, let's say like that, be better as society and really work. That's why I'm really pushing this of the collectively. And about the youth, I think the adults should not be afraid of the youth power, because everybody was youth here once, and everybody knows the agency that we can have to transform worlds. And it's just about giving opportunity for us to speak for ourselves. We are not against anyone. I think we all have the same objective here. It's just to give the space for you. We can really implement our ideas, our perspectives, but also have our voice in this place, in the table, as we are here today in this panel. So I thank you also for this opportunity to share and echo the voices of the youth.
Thank you, Kylie. So thank you everybody for coming. So in this event, you heard how states are encouraging synergies, but keep in mind that these synergies are really carried by civil society and how social movements are already connecting. So before COP30, I will encourage you to look at several campaigns coming up. We have the Just Transition Rising. So it's a huge effort we are doing here, the food sovereignty movement, reaching out to the climate movement to make sure that the right to food is central to the just transition, and that UNDROP, for example, is also a key milestone in this reflection. We also have a People's Summit on the side of COP, an autonomous event, which is absolutely crucial and will be one of the big success of COP. So thank you again for coming. This event was co-organized with Switzerland, Brazil, Colombia, and the PFM. Thank you all. Thank you to our brilliant panelists. Thank you to the interpreters for making this event multilingual. And finally, thank you to the CSIPM Secretariat, especially Betsy over here. So round of applause to everybody.